Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Erik Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health. What's up, man or woman? How you doing today? I will say, I am having a little bit of a hard time trying to figure out how to address you a-holes because, a lot of people will be like, hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing? What's up, guys? And it just drives me crazy when people just overuse the word guys. When I was a comic, I felt like every other comic, that I would watch on stage would be like, you guys know what this is about, guys? You guys, guys, are you guys? What's the deal with guys? And I feel like it's so just, amateur, just to overuse the word guys. So I'm trying to not say that. So I apologize if, my beginnings are a little choppy because, there's the habitual side of my brain wants to be like, how you guys doing? But I don't want to say that anymore. And it has nothing to do with, gender, pronouns or anything like that. I've been against addressing people as guys since before guys weren't sure they wanted to be guys anymore. I'm old school, bitch. I know how this shit works. So don't start lumping me in with these, whatever. I'm not Huffington Post. I'm not the Huffington Post, okay? I don't care what you're about. You're here because you want to learn about health. And that's what I'm here to deliver. And when it comes to health, there is no gender pronoun situation happening. If you have a penis, you're a guy. If you have a vagina, you're a woman. And both of your health situations are completely different. And if you need more testosterone, if you need more estrogen, whatever. What the hell are we talking about? This isn't what I want to do the podcast about today. But it is something that bothers me. So let's just stop saying the word guys. So what I'm doing now is I go like, y'all. I'm like, you all. It doesn't even sound right when you say you all. It doesn't sound right when I say y'all. Like, I grew up in Arizona, I grew up around real, actual cowboys. I watched, cowboys with, open carry, handguns on the side of their hips, shopping at Whole Foods. I know what y'all is about, and I don't feel good about myself when I call a group of people y'all. But I also don't feel good about myself when I call a group of people you all. So I don't know. We're going to figure this out. Either way, thanks for tuning into the podcast where today I want to talk about this another overused phrase. I don't know if it's still being used, but it definitely was being used. It was probably in its heyday when I was a kid, and that is parents telling their kids to finish their plates by convincing them that if they don't, they are somehow insulting starving children in Africa. I never understood how this whole thing came about. Maybe there is a long lineage of food shaming that goes back to somebody, bringing up the fact that, hey, here in America, we're totally privileged to have all the food we want any time of year. So you should just really eat it all. Because if you don't, that is directly insulting all the poor, starving children in Africa. So I want to talk about that because I think there's some interesting angles and consequences that have come out of this starving children in Africa paradigm. And we're gonna hash it out. Maybe you were one of these victims of your parents just jamming it in your brain that you have to eat more than you're capable of eating because there's starving children in Africa. Maybe you're a listener of the podcast and you were a starving child in Africa, and now you're just a big-time mogul who makes his living selling scam internet telephone service to senior citizens. I don't know, but we're gonna get into all that. So stay tuned. But in the meanwhile, I want to say what's up if you're a new listener, if you're an old listener, thanks for coming back. If you're new, thanks for finding the podcast. Make sure you just subscribe to the podcast since you made it all the way here. And go find the Holistic A-Hole on all the socials. Specifically, there's a new Holistic A-Holes Facebook group that I started to really kind of build some community around not just the podcast, but about certain health topics, about, these different kind of health things that go on, things that I'm learning about pertaining to holistic health, successes people are having, I guess, in their diets or in their newfound health paradigm, whatever it is. It's a good place to go to just kind of find some new information about all kinds of stuff relating to holistic health. And it doesn't matter if you're vegan, if you're keto, if you're flexitarian, it doesn't matter what your, quote unquote diet is. If you're a bodybuilder, if you're a long distance athlete, if you're just a couch potato and you just want, to fill your brain with some good health information and share it and debate it and argue it. This is what Facebook is all about. The Holistic A-Holes group is a good place to go. So just go over to Facebook, search the Holistic A-Holes, not Holistic A-Hole, that's me, but you can like the page Holistic A-Hole. But go to the group Holistic A-Holes, join on in, contribute, be a wallflower, it doesn't matter. Just get in the group so you can stay afloat of everything that is good about health. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is this starving children in Africa conspiracy theory. That's what I'm going to call it. Because somehow more than one person jumped on this bandwagon of convincing kids that there are starving children in Africa and all they want to do is eat your food. And it's not fair because they live in Africa and you live in the US or England or wherever you're listening to this from. I don't know if I have any British listeners, but good day, mate. That's Australian, I think. Whatever. Whatever this starving children in Africa conspiracy, however it started, it's got to end. It really has to end because there's so much wrong with it. First of all, I would venture to say 9 out of 10 parents who tell their kids to finish the food on their plate because they're starving children in Africa know nothing about international, issues. They have probably not looked into the fact that there is a lot of government interference that goes down in countries and continents. Africa's not even a country. It's a continent. Did you know that? I know that. I almost said it was a country, but it's not a country. It's a continent. It's a continent filled with many countries. So to say that there are starving children in Africa basically underscores the fact that there's a whole bunch of different people and economies and marketplaces that go down on the continent of Africa. It's like looking at the US and being like, hey, everything is the same. That's going on in the US, that's going on in Mexico, and that's what's going on in Canada. Because it's all just America. It's all just North America. So everybody's just rich in America. Really? Go tell that to people living under fear of drug cartels in, what is that? Juarez, Mexico, or even like Puerto Penasco, or any of these Mexican countries. I think Cancun has fallen under some pretty serious problems with the drug cartels there. Either way, telling your kids to finish their food because they're starving children in Africa just right off the bat shows how ignorant you are. And look, I'm not coming to this as any kind of expert on what's happening in Africa. I just know enough to know that this image that we have of Africa, it's not right. Are there places in Africa that are just complete destitute poverty? 100%. Totally. I don't know what those countries are. Is it Zimbabwe? Is it Chad? Is it, Somalia? I don't know. Probably, yeah. But there's places that, people live normal. There's places where they still have hunter-gatherers, and they don't need all of the stuff that we need. They're fine walking around in loincloths and spears and spearing wild boar or whatever they spear, or fish, or whatever it is, okay? They just live differently than us, and they don't care. They're totally fine. They're you know what? Having all of this stuff makes me kind of wish, in a way, that I lived like them. I highly doubt there's anybody who lives in a hunter-gatherer society who's dealing with excessive amounts of anxiety because, their friend's Instagram story that they saw, they were at a party and then they didn't get invited to the party, and they were like, I didn't know there was a party, and now they're like, I can't believe Trisha is such a cunt. Nobody's walking around the Serengeti, or the bush going like, Trisha's such a cunt. They're like, shit, I gotta go spear a boar because I can see my rib cage again. It's only the second week of August. So right off the bat, this whole trying to relate our knowledge to our children about Africa we don't know what we're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. So here's the problem with it, is when you tell your kid that they need to eat their food because they're starving kids in Africa, the kid doesn't have the common sense to basically make a mental profile, like I just did, of what might be the reality of Africa. They just think like, oh, it's, Sally Struthers Africa, and there's kids in, cages, and they've got flies flying around their face, and you can see all their rib cages, and they obviously are living in a war-torn country, that's probably funded through, American-sponsored NGOs. There's probably some American state-sponsored terrorism going on somewhere in the situation. You can look at a country like Libya, for instance. We really completely just royally fucked that country. I believe that was one of the richest countries in the world, or at least on the African continent. Is Libya even in Africa? I think it is. Until America went in there and completely just destabilized the place to the point where they have open slave trade now, supposedly. So there might be starving kids in Libya, but how'd they get there? I don't know. Why don't we look at the WikiLeaks files and see what John Podesta and Hillary Clinton think about that situation? Okay, let's pull back from that. The other thing, right? When you're telling your kid that there's starving kids in Africa, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, kid, eat more. And so the kid's like, oh, God, I got to finish my plate. Why? Like, what is the obsession with making your kids eat more than they want to eat? Like, I get it. Like, you have kids, probably most kids are picky eaters, and they're looking at this garbage that you made them, and they're like, I don't want to eat that shit. I don't want to eat that crap, Where does that even come from? Maybe you should identify the source of why your kid is so resistant to actual food that you make, or that you're trying to get it to eat. And a lot of times, it's not like the parents are trying to get the kid to eat some kind of nutrient-dense meal. It could just be a piece of garbage. It could just be like it could be a cheeseburger, It could be like you hear this at McDonald's, right? People are like, finish your fries. Is there any worse thing to do to your kid than to force him to finish McDonald's French fries? Now, look, I understand. This could be completely hypocritical because I was raised on McDonald's French fries, and I loved every bite of those delicious, golden fried, crispy, salted, fucking drowned in vegetable oil, just carcinogenic vegetable oil French fries. And I loved it, but it definitely didn't help me in any way. It definitely probably drew away a lot of my health profile when I was a kid. Probably, caused a lot of intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Probably led to a lot of gut dysfunction, which probably contributed to things like brain fog. Probably, I'm sure as a kid, I was pre-diabetic in some way, just never got diagnosed, But don't do that to your kid. Don't force your kid to eat more than he can eat or she can eat, If the kid gets hungry, then the kid gets hungry. You gotta teach these kids lessons. They need the nutrition. But if you're trying to force feed them garbage nutrition, you're just hurting the kid. If you're trying to force these kids to eat fried bullshit, then you're hurting the kid. If you're trying to get the kid to eat more greens, more rice, more whole grains, more good fats, good whole fruits. Kids tend to like fruit, I notice, because it's sweet, right? But you're just like force feeding your kid to drive this kid into one of the biggest problems with children today, which is childhood obesity. 1 in 3 Americans is considered obese or overweight. 1 in 5 children is considered obese or overweight. No. I think it's actually 1 in 3. 1 in 3 children in the U.S. is considered obese or overweight. Isn't that insane? Isn't that an insane number? 1 in 3, dude. 1 in 3. I mean, that's just like a mind-blowing number to me. I don't remember when I was a kid. This is 30 years ago. I don't remember when I was a kid, there being that many freaking fat kids. I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all. Maybe I have some kind of, selective memory or something. But Jesus Christ, there's a lot of fat kids in this country. And that's not good, man. I'm not totally convinced on this whole BMI argument. I used to live and die by the BMI. And by the way, this just in case anybody's hearing me say this and your eyes are rolling in the back of your head. Oh God, just preach on, holistic a-hole. This 1 in 3 American kids being overweight or obese, that stat comes from the American Heart Association on the heart.org website. So you can look that up for yourself. Which is even scarier. I wish I was making that number up. I wish I could make that number up and then somebody come back and be like, no, Eric, it's 1 in 10, you dummy. Here's the site that says, no, this came from the American Heart Association, who, by the way, I understand, they're a little corrupt too. I don't know where they're corrupt and where they're not. It's all just an emotional roller coaster with trying to verify, who is accurate and who is not. But 1 in 3 kids being obese, okay? And then, you go looking around the internet, and if you're a parent, it's gotta be really heartbreaking and frustrating. Unless you're a fat parent and you're like, yes, I got a fat kid now. We can all be fat together. I don't have to pretend to like healthy shit. My kid can get fat. I can die before I'm 60, and then they can just pick up the reins. Yes, the lineage continues. So everywhere you look around on the internet, this is the most frustrating part too, is when you Google childhood obesity or something, you start coming around to the idea of childhood diabetes. And 1 in 5 healthcare dollars is spent managing Americans' diabetes. I believe 1 in 5 Americans has diabetes, some form of diabetes. Type 2, type 1. Type 1 is a different monster. Okay, type 1 diabetes is that's autoimmunity. A lot of times that is, has a lot to do with genetics. Is type 1 diabetes reversible? I don't think it is, but it, of course, is highly manageable. But type 2 diabetes, which, by the way, used to be called adult onset diabetes. Type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes until recently. We've always known type 2 diabetes, but it wasn't officially type 2 diabetes until I think 20 or 30 years ago. It hasn't been that long. And that's frustrating. You might be like, what's the big deal? It's frustrating because when it was adult onset diabetes, it specifically made you know that you're not supposed to have diabetes until you're a freaking adult, okay? And I would say back then it was probably like it didn't make sense to have diabetes until you were probably in your 50s or 60s. There's a lot of different things going on with your body. There's a lot of different things going on with your blood sugar. Your metabolism goes way down. All of your glands and your hormones, they just work differently when you're older. So it makes sense that, okay, not everybody's going to live in perfect health. Most people are not going to live in perfect health. Most people are not going to even live in good health. So it makes sense that you can develop type 2 diabetes, basically insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. Your insulin just cannot deliver glucose into your cells anymore. So that makes sense, right? But now that it's called just type 2 diabetes and not adult onset diabetes, now it's like, okay, well, it's just normal that anybody can get diabetes. It's normal that you can get diabetes before you're an adult. It makes sense you can get diabetes when you're a teenager or even before you're a teenager, before you even hit puberty. If you are getting type 2 diabetes, your parents failed. You didn't fail as a kid, your parents failed because they put no good nutrition in your face. They introduced you, and it's like, it's not even like they didn't get you good food. They didn't teach you good food habits. So now that you're, 8, 9, 10, you're out there, you're a kid, you're going to school, you don't have any idea how to make good food choices. Like when you're a kid, you should start slowly being able to make somewhat good food choices. Somewhere along the line, someone should tell you as a kid, and a kid should be able to comprehend this, that you should not eat a lot of sugar. You should not eat garbage processed food. Parents can totally control this. They can keep their kids as best they can to instill something in them that says if it comes in a box, it's not good. If it comes in plastic wrapping, it's not good. And I know kids are going to go to school and they're very influenced by their friends, but you don't develop the constant pattern of bad food habits just because of your friends. That's a home thing. That's a parents failing thing. And there's probably a lot more undercurring problems than just the kid being overweight, right? So there's no excuse for kids to have diabetes. And then you look around online, you could look at diabetes.org, you could look at this other one, Joslin Diabetes Center. I guess there's some diabetes clinic. Everything is just about managing your diabetes. It's just about managing your diet. There's no beating diabetes. There's no reversing diabetes. I think diabetes.org, what they say is they go, we're here to help you reverse and avoid diabetes or something like that. But then there's no information on how to do that. It's just about managing it. So if you get diabetes, it's like, well, this is your death sentence. Good luck. We're going to teach you how to eat the right food so you don't go into insulin shock. We're going to teach you how to eat, manage your diabetes so that it doesn't hit you at the wrong time, so that you don't, pass out behind the wheel. But we're not going to teach you how to actually beat the motherfucker. We're not going to teach you how to actually reverse your diabetes or just avoid it altogether. Also, it's kind of a touchy subject, but gestational diabetes, I believe that's where the mom gets the diabetes while the kid is still in the womb. I mean, dude, look, I've never been pregnant. I've seen a lot of pregnant people. I've had people in my family who've been pregnant. Seems like you want to eat a lot. Seems like you're hungry all the time. I totally get it. But at the same time, you can't just binge on fucking cheesecake and ice cream and, McDonald's and greasy food. You're going to fucking give yourself diabetes, and then the kid gets that too, right? The kid takes in those nutrients, and, what's it? Natal care, prenatal care, postnatal care, like all this shit matters in the health of a baby. Your pre-pregnancy health, the father's pre-pregnancy health, what kind of what kind of DNA are you actually giving the kid in the first place? Man, this also brings me down the line of a podcast I'm going to do very soon of this whole Pottinger's cats situation. Now, I understand this is going to be a whole thing on its own. I don't want to go too deep into it, but Pottinger's cats is basically a study. Okay, it was this guy, Dr. Pottinger. He did these experiments with these cats. I think I've talked about this before on this podcast, where he basically studied the difference between giving cats, good, whole, unprocessed food versus giving cats, and specifically it was milk and meat, versus giving cats processed, pasteurized milk. Is it pasteurized or is it whatever it is, cooked milk? I think it's pasteurized. Pasteurized milk and cooked meat. So one group of cats was getting, raw milk, raw meat, and then they would mix it up. Like some groups of cats would get like raw milk, cooked meat. Some cats would get cooked milk, raw meat, and then some cats would get like fully cooked milk, cooked meat, and then some cats would get like raw meat, raw milk. So there was like 4 different groups. And what they did is they studied these cats as they would, live their lives and observe like under different like stress scenarios. Now these studies were done, I think like almost 100 years ago, like, 80, 90 years ago. I think like in the 1920s, 1930s. Now, if you're not allowed to do these experiments. Like PETA would be all over you, activist groups would be just all over you because they'd be like, you're being cruel to the cats, and you'd be like, this is for science, this is for the health of future humans. They'd be like, no, you can't. You're killing cats, because they would they show videos of throwing the cats and see how many of the cats like actually land on their feet, because cats are supposed to land on their feet. They'd freaking throw the cats against the wall. They'd like poke at the cats. They'd, talk shit to it. They'd tell the cat that it's, that nobody loves it. And then they'd, feed it the garbage food or whatever. And they would notice that the cats with the more processed diet were slow responders. They had their fur didn't grow right. They twitched. They were very jumpy. They had mental problems. They would spin around. They had psychosis, all this stuff. But then the cats that got the raw milk and the raw meat, were able to live full, healthy lives and then produce good, healthy offspring. The cats with the incrementally worse diets actually started producing worse offspring. So they would basically take fully healthy cats, give them shit food, and then what they found was that the shit food made shit genetics, and then the shit genetics would make shit litter, right? Shit offspring. And then through the generations, the offspring would just get shittier and shittier until I think the 3rd generation of the bad diet cats, they could not reproduce. And you see that happening now. Isn't that crazy? You see it happening now where people are not able to reproduce without prenatal drugs, I don't exactly know what the prenatal drugs are. Are they pills? They're probably hormones of some sort, definitely going to be hormones. Maybe you as a listener have taken these prenatal drugs to produce offspring. Just know you're broken. You're broken. You should be able to, as a human, I should be able to. I have not produced any offspring. There is a bit of me that's nervous that I'm not going to be able to. Luckily, we live in America and, we live in the 21st century, and I'll always be able to produce offspring because I have these freaking drugs. But if a situation comes up where I can't, then I got to take the drugs. This is not how we should be making kids, by the way. We should not be making kids with added drugs. You know what I mean? We should be able to make kids from our straight up sperm and eggs, but the fact is our diets and our lifestyles, and a lot of this is due to drinking, smoking, processed food, sugar, high sodium, all this stuff, right? This is what is affecting our ability to procreate. And if the Pottinger's cat study is correct, we're probably hitting up against that 3rd generation right now, which again is why prenatal drugs and prenatal care is such a big industry because it's out there. So how does this come back to starving kids in Africa? Well, basically my point is you're chunking up your kids for no reason. You're force feeding your kids with the garbage food that you want them to eat, and you're causing this epidemic of obesity. If you got a fat kid and you know you've constantly told this kid just to keep eating, even if it's just at the dinner table, this kid's he's gonna take that with them. I keep saying he, girl, guys, come on, guys. You guys know what I'm talking about, guys. You know what I'm talking about, a girl or a guy or a guy or a guys. Ugh, God, man. So the kid takes this knowledge that they should just be finishing their food to completion, and then when they become an adult and all they want to do is lose all that weight, and then people keep telling them, giving them some information where they're like, you need to eat in moderation. Everything in moderation. If you have a full plate, only eat till the plate is half done. And then when you start to feel a little full, then you stop eating. Yeah, just stop eating. Look at the food. It's not done. That's what you want to see. Take a leftover with you. Put it in your microwave. It's even better like that. Ugh. Moderation. Go fuck yourself. Dude, if you are taught from an early age to live in excess, if you're taught from an early age to fill yourself past capacity because mom will feel insulted because you didn't eat all of her Brussels sprouts or all of her, deep fried chicken steaks or whatever, you're basically programmed in this kid to never eat in moderation. And as an adult, it's going to be a very, very difficult habit to form, okay? And one last thing I want to say about this. I thought this was actually maybe the most interesting fact of this whole argument, which is starving kids in Africa, almost half of all the overweight children in the world, and this is according to the World Health Organization, almost half of all the overweight children in the world under 5 lived in Asia, and 1/4 of the overweight children in the world lived in Africa. So let me say that again. 1/4 of all of the overweight and obese children in the world in 2016, according to the World Health Organization, live in Africa. So I don't know how these statistics get divvied up. I don't know who does these surveys. I don't know if they're taking like excessively wealthy parts of Africa and then, lumping those numbers into just the completely impoverished places, and then you get these, really beefed up averages. I don't know. But I can tell you that knowledge is almost as incomplete as just the phrase starving children in Africa is. It tells none of the story of what's really happening in Africa. It tells none of the story about any kind of nutritional qualities or nutritional habits that you want to be teaching children in the first place. It's just embedding in your child's head, hey, you live in America, asshole, so consume. And if you don't consume, I'm going to slap you upside your head. So we're going to talk more about childhood obesity, definitely as the podcast goes along, because I think it's incredibly important. I wish I had the ability to be able to communicate to children or to communicate to parents and be able to fix this childhood obesity problem and instill good food habits. But, obviously a child brain is a completely different thing. This podcast is meant for adults. So if you're an adult and you have kids or you're about to have kids, please don't use that line. If you want your kid to eat, instill good nutritional habits from a young age. Fill the kid with nothing but good nutrition. So even if they don't eat all the stuff you want them to eat, at least they ate something that had nutrition. keep them away from all the processed stuff. If you go grocery shopping with the kid, don't bring it into the middle aisles of the store where all the boxes of cereal are, where all of the, all that crap is. Not to mention, you have these sites that are telling you, like if you don't know, like what's the kind of food I should get my kid, they want you to go to like the food pyramid or the My Plate or whatever. Also, the diabetes pyramid is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. The diabetes pyramid, it's like at the top are all the whole grains. So they're encouraging you to feed your kids like cereal and whole grain muffins. And if you listen to the last podcast, you know how I feel about muffins. So just think to yourself, whole foods, nutrition. How can we best get the nutrition in this kid? Teach your kid about good fats. Keep them away from the hydrogenated oils. Keep them away from any oils. Don't feed your kid any vegetable oils. Don't feed your kid any fried stuff. If they're going to learn about fried stuff, you teach them about it so they know how to handle it in the real world. They're probably going to eat nachos. They're probably going to eat cheeseburgers. They're probably going to eat pizza. They're probably going to eat French fries. They're probably going to eat, candy canes. They're probably going to eat, all of this stuff, right? But if you as a parent take that first step and really genuinely introduce them, give them the flavor in their mouth for whole nutrient-dense food, then eating this stuff is not going to be a problem. And you know what? Maybe what they'll do instead is they'll take the starving kids in Africa approach and eat up all the nutrient-dense food and then learn that the other food, it doesn't make them feel good. When you eat a healthy diet, I'll tell you, man, when you eat garbage. When you've eaten something fried in just shit oil. When you've eaten something that's just pumped full of high fructose corn syrup because it's uncomfortable. If all you do is eat good and then you eat something that has no nutritional value, it's full of, bad fats and, high fructose corn syrup and high amounts of sodium, and it's just a nuclear bomb of chemicals in your mouth, like potato chips, Doritos, all that like ice cream, all this shit, your kid will feel uncomfortable too, especially if they're, active. They don't want to eat that stuff. So instead of forcing your kids to eat more than they want, just have them eat better stuff. And you teach them, you take the lead and teach them along the way. Also, if you're pregnant, really look into gestational diabetes and do everything you can to avoid that. And know that your kid is taking the nutrition that you feed it. So if you feed it fried garbage, you're already implementing that taste into the kid's DNA. So, parents, just let's all be good. Let's all be good parents, right? And if you're not a bad parent if you do this. It's just we all have to adjust, right? So I would love to know what you think. Are you a parent dealing with this thing? Are you a starving kids in Africa survivor? Let me know. Shoot me an Instagram message. Just take a photo of the podcast playing in your phone, take a screenshot of it, put it in your Instagram story, and tag me, the Holistic A-Hole. And let me know what you think. Did you survive the Starving Kids in Africa propaganda? Are you a Starving Kids in Africa promoter? Do you have a fat kid? Are you a fat kid? Let me know. Hit me up on Instagram. Also, go to the Facebook group, Holistic A-Holes. And if you haven't done this yet, subscribe and take an afternoon and binge on all the previous episodes. We're getting close to episode 100, which is a pretty fun milestone for me and all the listeners who've been around. And even if you're new, welcome to the tribe, baby. Love to have you here. So have a great weekend, everybody. Keep listening. Share this with those you love, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.